It's 6 o'clock. This is the Center Street Lots Committee meeting for Thursday, the 17th of July, 2025. And welcome all. We have approval of minutes. We're going to talk about some interesting scenarios for the Center Street Lots and other business, if any. At some point, at 7:15, I need to step out for about 15 minutes. But I think you will have plenty to talk about. So and then I'll step back in. Minutes. Do we have minutes?
Yes, we have minutes. I mean, I can pull that up. That would be helpful. We got a quick change from Anne.
Okay.
Thank you for that. That was just a small typo. But I don't think anything otherwise.
Okay.
Did anyone else have comments or revisions on the minutes?
Okay. All right. So we have a motion to approve the minutes. So I'll make a motion. And yes. Okay. We have to, because we have a couple of people online. We have to do a roll call vote. So I'll start with the fire in the room. Brooke.
Yes.
Hi, Ann.
Yes.
Julia.
Yes.
Len.
Yes.
Elaine.
Yes.
That's it. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Gary, there you are, Gary. Where you go? Moshe
Moshe just joined.
Yes, present.
and Jim
Hi.
on minutes. Jim?
Hi.
Okay, and the chair votes aye. All right. That was okay, take it away.
Great, thank you, Mike. Hey, everybody, we are excited to be presenting some concepts tonight. So hope that you are excited as well. In a minute, I'm going to reintroduce you to my partner, Jeff Speck. Some of you met him on a prior walking tour of the lots. Jeff and I formed Speck Dempsey in 2023. We officially started in 2024. Jeff had been running his own firm, Speck and Associates, for 17 years before that. And in our conversations in 2023, he said, I don't really like working in Brookline because it's just too close to home. I know too many people. I can work around the country and around the world, and it's just cleaner and easier if I don't work in Brookline. But if the Center Street lots are ever in need of design, that is the one project that I want to do. And sure enough, that opportunity presented itself just maybe 6 months later. So this is a site that he has been wanting to plan and design for many, many years. And again, hope that you are excited to see what's in store or what might be possible.
It's up there with the parking lot in Newton Center. And where I grew up, Belmont Center, if you know the parking lot behind that, also an opportunity, but this is the one that's closest to home.
So that's a reintroduction of Jeff. And then also working on this project is Ben Parker. And I think Ben was going to tune in. I'm not sure if he
Ben's online.
He is on. Okay. So Ben is a relatively recent graduate of the Harvard Graduate School of Design, really an exceptionally talented person who is part of the broader Speck Dempsey family.
But he went back, so he's mid-career, and he actually was top of his class in the urban design program.
Trained as an architect. He is actually in China right now and joining us at 6 a.m. From China. In a month or so, he is moving to Hawaii, where he's going to start a role as a tenure track professor at the University of Hawaii in their architecture school. But very talented person, and he and Jeff really developed these schemes together. And you may hear a little bit from Ben. He may jump in, and he's certainly very interested in the feedback and the questions that you all are going to have today. I want to just talk quickly about timeline before I turn it over to Jeff. So today is July 17th. We're sharing these draft concepts. And the goal of today's meeting is to try to narrow down the 5 options that we're going to put in front of you to 3 options. And we would love it if the committee can get there. That may be an impossible task because of you seeing this for the first time tonight and wanting to think about it some more. But the more that you can narrow down the options today, the better. It will allow us to then start the next step of the process, which is to actually create some visualizations. Everything you're going to see today is in 2 dimensions, plus some images of precedents or examples that look like what we're showing in 2D. But the next step is we're going to be able to show it in 3D, but we can't do that for all 5 options. We can only do it for 3. And so very soon we need to narrow it down as much as we can, or to those 3 options. And we'll come back in August with some of those visualizations, as well as some preliminary cost estimates. So we know that it's a hard task to narrow it down without the visualizations or the cost estimates, but that's the way that this has been structured. Then in September, the hope is that you can really narrow it down to 1, or maybe there's one and a second preferred option for this committee. And then we'll be able to do some traffic and parking evaluations, some operation and maintenance evaluations, and to further refine the visualizations that we created for the August meeting. So it's an ambitious goal to try to narrow it down today, but we are hopeful that we can get there. And with that, I will turn it over to Jeff, who's going to walk you through these options.
Is this on your computer?
Yeah, so I can
Because
point.
if I get up there and point, people who are on Zoom can't see me point. But I could take your computer and move the arrow around. Sure, let me do that. So hi, everybody. Yeah, I have the easy job, which is what I enjoy doing the most, which is talking about design and presenting these options that we've developed. But you have the hard job, which is coming to understand them better. I'm gonna please. Chris said this might be ill-advised, but I'm going to say interrupt me at any time if you're confused or just want some clarification. If that becomes suggesting we're going to be here till midnight, I'll say, please stop interrupting me. But minimize this bit here. So there we go. So it was very clear that there were other options that we certainly could have considered. But it became very clear through the public outreach that you and Chris and Genevieve have discussed much more than with me, but that I was made very well aware of, that these 3 expectations were sitting behind everything that we did. While there are great solutions that would move the parking elsewhere, and there's a parking study that suggests that it's possible, that does not seem politically viable. The farmers market, well, everyone wants the farmers market to somehow this advance without my wanting it to, and I can't go back. Genevieve, what's the trick?
Yeah.
It's because of the advancers potentially.
Yeah, like this.
While we're on, Mary, you have your hand raised. What can we tell you?
Marion, you're muted.
Okay. I don't know where you got the preserved parking, because frankly, for a lot of people, it was increase the parking and make up for the loss of parking that will come from the making the T handicapped accessible and for the proposed bridle path. So when you had the 4 options, everything was increase, 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 and parking was preserved. And I think for many people, including all those who spoke about a garage, it's to increase the parking and at least make up for the loss of parking elsewhere.
Okay.
Understood. You will see that all but one of our schemes provides for the opportunity for more parking. One scheme maintains the amount of parking roughly.
Which means a loss in the neighborhood. Okay.
Duly noted. Number 2, preserve space for the farmers market. I think everyone loves having the farmers market in the heart of Brookline. We as well would be very unhappy to see that go away. But also, again, the word preserve, I think everyone understands, and all our schemes begin with the goal of enhancing the experience of being at the farmer's market. People note a desire for electricity, a desire for storage. That's possible with all of the schemes that we're showing. And then finally, improve the quality of Coolidge Corner. I think that could be restated in a number of ways, but most people want to see it greener, more trees, more open space, and we're super interested in what our practice focuses on, which is social space, like space that's well shaped, that's confronted with friendly faces that people want to spend time in. And the idea that there could actually be an addition to the network of active, even retail spaces in Coolidge Corner back into the block. And some of the places that we love the best for shopping and vacations and everything else. And I don't know if you guys know Lincoln Road in Miami Beach or Worth Avenue in Palm Beach, but this idea of penetrating into the block and finding this little world behind that's more intimate and less vehicular, ideally, is a goal that we have. So those are the characteristics. I think you know the site really well. When we were trying to win this job, I showed some of these images identifying the remarkable, the lucky. This is what you call a lucky site when things line up. This one, I thought it was because there was a street here originally, but there wasn't. This is kind of just a happy accident that the path that comes in from the southwest corner actually aims directly, far in the distance at the walk that goes to the block. And it can be dizzying to steer that far. But then there's also this axis of Babcock Street coming through the Arcade Building, which is an internal street, but a street nonetheless, that also terminates on the dead center on the apartment building that's across the street. And then, of course, all the little paths, the nooks and crannies that puncture the block and create that opportunity for a more intimate walkable scale and perhaps imply some other axes that shoot through the site. So that's kind of where we began. So we're going to be showing you 5 options. They're kind of in random order, but we begin with the cheapest and we end with the most expensive. The first we're calling the Grove. You could also call it the parking lot. But the idea that a parking lot can also be a grove, and a parking lot can feel like a forest, and the trees grow pretty quickly. This is, albeit in Florida, where we're doing a project in Boca Raton, where one of the parking lots is one of the nicest spots near City Hall because of the trees that are over it. Trees grow quickly there. They don't grow quickly in Colorado, where it's very dry. This is a part of a project that I was involved in, I guess, 27 years ago. These trees were planted about 25 years ago, and it's great to go back. I actually hadn't seen this project since we designed it, but these trees are what, 50 feet, 60 feet tall, and they're, less than half my age. They're well less than half my age. So trees can go pretty quickly if you take good care of them. There's also the idea, and I don't think we're recommending gravel where you have snow, but the idea that the drainage can be under the trees, and that you don't have curbs, and that actually we can do rain gardens and have natural grasses and other things underneath the trees to handle stormwater in a much more sustainable way. There's also the discussion of pavements. This is a street, not a parking lot, but it's a project that we have admired for some time and have actually emulated in a similar project in the middle of the country. This one's in California, where you see they turned basically a highway that was a main street into a parking plaza, and the combination of pavers, not just asphalt, but pavers and nicely planted trees makes a parking space into a social space. Interestingly, this is also used for farmers markets, and they just shut the center to parking and fill it with stands. This is an old favorite parking lot of mine that leads to the pool I used to swim in during my decade in Miami. It just takes one parking space to create a path through a parking lot that's lined by trees and makes a destination much happier to achieve. So this is the Grove concept. And I want to say for most of these concepts, we are looking at 2 scenarios regarding the CVS and the Maruichi site. We understand that it is a single-story building in a largely multi-story downtown, that if the owners wish to redevelop it, it would be great for the scheme and it would allow retail to stay on the ground floor, but then to have residential upstairs, maybe 3 or 4 stories of residential above. So without getting anyone's permission, we wanted to show these options, and all of the schemes we're going to show you consider this option. Now, a typical building for residential wants to be 65 feet thick. And if my arrow is visible, this 65-foot thickness is what you get with with economically produced apartments, which have the hallway down the middle and apartments on either side. That's a lucky solution for this site because it allows you to do 2 things. It allows you to peel back and have a plaza on Harvard Street, which is something Harvard Street is really missing, right? A front plaza where you can hang out and have coffee and enjoy outdoor dining, which exposes the marquee of the cinema, which is exactly this long. Peeling back from the back creates a plaza against the parking lot and exposes the facade of the new hidden beautiful addition to the cinema. So a building of this shape, which could potentially, as it sets back from the street, become taller, right? When you set it back, it can be taller, is a nice solution for this site. However, we are not expecting that. The other thing you see in this drawing is the which you'll see in most of the schemes unchanged, is the idea that the parking lot to the south could become a residential site with a pedestrian muse, with a pedestrian street through the center. We put these in a lot of our projects. People love them. This scheme takes all of the parking that's in this area and moves it into this area, which now we're allowed to make much more efficient. You can see in this scheme, we've created just a better parking lot so that this walk through is better, but we haven't used any of this space for residential. We've just considered paving this southern lot, which some of you may consider the western lot.
West, yeah.
Yeah, this west lot, sorry, north is angled in a nicer way. Also key to this scheme is the idea that this path through the center goes straight through the center. You know, the experience, I imagine you guys like us have the experience of trying to walk on that axis and having to zigzag between cars, which really isn't very pleasant. What you're also seeing is basically for every 3 or 4 parking spaces, there's a missing space, which has a ground cover of some kind, hopefully sustainable, pervious, and a tree in it. So we're actually able to really create a grove. You can see the zigzag motions that are required currently if you walk through the lot. And there's a few interesting things happening. Note here that it's 3.5 bays. And that's the inefficiency. You don't have 3 full bays. You 2.5 bays. Bay 1, bay 2, bay 3. Up against this curve, people do servicing, and it's important to maintain some room for servicing along this curve so you can load up the CVS and load up the Maruichi, et cetera. But you don't need all of it for servicing. And it would be much more efficient if it could be 3 bays instead of 2.5 bays wide. Happily, the drive aisles are much wider than the standard. You could narrow them a bit and still have room for one car to sit and another car to pass, which those of us who park there know is important. You don't want to stop that passing ability. But also there's this area in the middle which is serving no real purpose, except occasionally to hold the dysfunctional parking meters. Everyone who's had any experience there uses the app because the meters don't work. It is where I lock my bike to this handicap sign every day illegally. And I will find another spot to put my bike. So
Can I just?
yes, please.
If you go back to the schematics, it's possible to mix and match. That is, you could do make the change and make a more attractive lot on the west side and still have the housing and so forth.
Absolutely. This is a kit of parts. Yeah. So this lot essentially replaces the parking that's in it and across the street. So it maintains this axis that we discussed through the slot between the Maruichi and the dog walkers building. As I said, it lines that with housing on both sides, creating a bit of a court by tucking back. This is imagined as row houses, and this is imagined as an apartment house. And it could be 3 stories, 2 stories. there's great examples, a project I was remotely involved in, Daybreak in South Jordan, has this quite tall mews on one side. Another part of the project has 1.5-story buildings. These look like some of the carriage houses you see on Pleasant Street. Or you could do a 2-story solution, but the idea of a very narrow space that's lined by buildings that aren't that tall, kind of want to go for that 1-to-1 ratio is very nice. First, Shannon.
Okay, so maybe you didn't get to it yet, but it's in my mind. Where's the preservation of farmers market space?
Of what?
Farmers market.
So the farmer's market would take place in the parking lot.
In which?
Any part of this main parking lot
In the
that
main.
was desired.
Okay, and then how would that space be demarcated? And so I guess what I'm wondering is if would that access be dividing it? So one half is farmer's market and the other half is
Well, let's
parking?
just say that the farmer's market right now is taking place down here, right?
It uses that full lot and is
Yeah.
actually supposed to use some public space that has been taken away.
And by the way, our schemes imagine reclaiming at least some of the
Thank you.
beer garden from Hamilton.
Okay.
So the,
Mhm.
yes,
So if you make that, but if you make that west lot residential, as you were just talking about, and then you have to move it to the east lot.
right.
And if that the walking access to me seems like the logical dividing point, what's the traffic flow through the lot for people to get from one aisle to the next?
So if the, and I'll admit, we haven't thought this through as much as you're probably thinking it through right now. But if this western lot is not redeveloped,
Look.
it would maintain as the farmer's
Right.
market. If it is redeveloped, again, the parking that is currently in this lot is now finding itself in this new efficient lot.
I'm not,
So that
I'm
we
not
could-
about number. of
So we
parking
could
spots.
take a segment of this lot, probably I'd say the end closest to the nice plaza against the cinema. Designate it as the farmer's market zone and then still have just about as many parking spaces left over as we currently do.
My concern is not number of spaces, it's
Circulation.
thank you, I couldn't think of the word. How, if cars, I imagine, would have a similar circulation pattern to what we have now, where you go down one aisle one way and then up the next way. If you're blocking part of more than one aisle, the cars can no longer do that.
That's a very smart comment that we did not consider.
Well,
So
not
there
have
would
the
need,
concrete.
if this were to be,
But then you lose more spots to.
we lose some spots.
Okay.
If this were to be designated for the farmer's market, which by the way, could spill out all the way down into
Yeah.
this corridor.
Well, it only could spill into that corridor if the theater doesn't think it would interfere with their things either,
Sure.
right? And if the farmer's market's on Thursdays, I imagine Thursday is an event night.
Yeah. But I think what you're suggesting is,
Then
They're cleaning up until pretty late.
what you're suggesting is there may be a need for some sort of midway aisle
yes.
to allow that circulation. I should say one of the flaws of the parking lot now is how long you have to go before you get the
Mhm.
opportunity to turn. So we didn't consider that. That might get us below the matching of the parking count. So
Okay.
that's something to consider.
I would just, if this makes it to the next stage, I
Yeah,
want to
that's a
see that
really
as
good,
part of the.
that's a really good,
Yeah,
Thanks.
that's actually, that's why.
My question was just that I know this is, schematic at this point, but the residential, that we were contemplating on the west lot, do you have a rough unit count of what you think that would be if it's row houses and you got 3-story?
I do not have a rough unit.
Okay.
It's not a lot.
Sean,
The other-
that's
the
why
other
I was
thing
asking
is-
about mixing that.
The other thing is that, we would love to see the residential that comes not come with parking.
Mm.
Right? We'd love to see it be, welcoming to those folks. In this scheme, the other schemes have ability to park more because they all have structures.
Yep.
In this scheme, it almost speaks to a more attainable housing solution where if this housing comes, these two pieces of housing come, we'd love to see it be more attainable housing that does not come with a parking space.
So Marion has her hand up. Marion?
I'm wondering about walking, what happened to the path by the trees at the William Street end of the lot? There doesn't seem to be a path there anymore. in the main lot.
Ah, okay.
There isn't really a path there now either. You kind of have to walk on the curb.
No, there is a sidewalk. There's a sidewalk. You can walk up Center Street
Yeah,
and you take a left and there is a sidewalk that ends and you can cross over and there's a sidewalk by Zoftig's, by the back of sidewalk. It's not ADA accessible. It doesn't have curb cuts. It narrows, but it is a sidewalk and 3/4 of it lets you walk outside of traffic.
right.
Because
I,
What if
and
this was
still there.
Yeah, that hasn't been changed. Also note that we really haven't proposed much change for down in this area, because it's really, we'd love to see this archway put to some use and we hope that can stay in play. But it is fairly out of sight, out of mind over here, and the way that this is backs that people park in, which is hard to change because it's private property along that edge, makes it a little bit difficult. The other thing I want to say is that this scheme does widen both of these flanking sidewalks. So there's enough room both to add the additional half alley, half parking, some of which is for service, but also this sidewalk, which you may recall basically has trees right in the middle of it, would get another 6 feet inboard from the trees. So your normal condition of trees protecting pedestrians from the street. And then this sidewalk, which has no trees, get an additional 6 feet that could actually hold trees. So that's another feature of this scheme. So yes, Len.
For the walking path, is that a raised path to slow cars?
Yeah, I would think it would be like a bit of a speed table.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Chris, any thoughts, anything I missed, John? So that's option one. Option two, we're calling the center lot. I wanted to spell it TRE, but people thought I would be referring to Center Street. So my joke was Vita. This scheme is the one scheme that requires removal of the CVS and Maruichi building.
Next.
Without removing that building, this scheme does not work. And it's the only scheme that does that. It was our charge to show every possible thing that we could imagine. Also understanding that the owners of that lot would perhaps like to redevelop it in a more profitable way into a bigger building. So what we're showing here, and I'll zoom in, what we're showing here is a number of things are happening. Because this building has been replaced with a bigger, more profitable building, we have been able to pull it back a little bit further from the dog walking slash, the building here that's next to the arcade. And that actually allows us to be a street. Now, when I say a street, I mean a street that might be bollarded, that might be pedestrian only, but that gives you that porousness. Generally, walkable places have smaller blocks, and smaller blocks for cars as well as for pedestrians. And so the idea that actually what you're seeing here, and because of the different surfaces, we've marked it in tan, but what you're seeing here is a loop around a plaza and then a continued street that would all be, at least some of the time, theoretically passable, part of the street network of Brookline. But what happens here is you have a large building that not only replaces the Maruichi and the CVS, but stretches all the way back to Center Street. That allows you a parking structure, which is quite large, and a wrap. It's wrapped on 3 sides. There is not a residential single-loaded corridor wrap, and I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. There's not room to wrap it on all 4 sides. And this side exposed against the theater and this area back here would need some special kind of treatment. Someone suggested even a climbing wall, if we could get a gym interested. You see the same solution to the south, because now we have so much parking, sorry, to the west. Now we have so much parking that we can absolutely use up this space and not worry about not having enough. We have this one-way loop around a central green, but we're showing the green as a plaza because it is now the farmer's market green. And it's big enough and sorry, jumping ahead. Jonathan, your computer is hyperkinetic. So what is there room for now? There's room for a building here that CVS or Maruichi could go into. So we could have retail around the green. There could be retail, small, shallow retail, like Bow Market in Somerville, stores all around the edge of the residential. And then upstairs, you have a single loaded corridor. You can even park back here behind your unit. And then you have apartments upstairs hiding the building. By the way, in many of these schemes, we're taking this is our spec density window right here. When we look out at this parking lot, there's a wonderful kind of building that takes parking and just puts it in a garage and has a granny flat upstairs. Can you imagine that? So the parking doesn't change, but there's stairs up to a unit above. What you're seeing here on the left is what we call granny flat sausage. It's a bunch of granny flats lined up just to give a nice edge to this little street that currently cuts through. So this is a residential building. Imagine it's maybe 5 stories with potentially retail below. This is developed in the way that we talked about. Now, no one likes an exposed parking deck. And that's why, having a solution like this where the deck is exposed really isn't acceptable, and something else has to be done. We learned from Mayor Riley in Charleston, who was mayor for 40 years and a friend of mine, that it only takes about 20 feet of building to hide 200 feet of parking. But the nominal measurement that developers like is this, what we're showing here is 35 feet. It's a hallway plus a full depth apartment. In my book, Walkable City Rules, I say hide the parking structure. So be very wary. I'm going to be showing you another scheme that really fails to hide the parking. So I want to say I'm on record as saying don't do this. But one side of the parking deck, I feel exposed to the inner block, it's not a travesty to show the parking. But of course, there's much better solutions. I call this the Chia Pet Garage. It's in South Beach, where I used to live in Miami. And then this is just some housing at the University of Arkansas. But you can see how ingenious developers have become, wrapping the parking decks with single loaded residential. That's the technique now that they're very used to doing. So you see that in the scheme now on 3 sides. I did pull it back 10 feet from the narrow sidewalk on Harvard Street, just to give a little more ample area for sidewalk dining and other things. That's this scheme. Yes, Len.
Can you say again how cars enter and exit this garage, where cars can and can't go?
So the garage entry is shown, my mouse is shown right there.
Okay.
So you enter there to be like an archway in the building, and then you can ramp up like that.
Enter and exit.
And exit. These are 2-way ramps.
And approximately how many levels to get the number of parking spaces?
I don't remember the numbers, and I actually welcome Ben while he's listening to have the numbers ready. Ben, should we go back and talk about the numbers here first?
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great. Do you want to talk about
Okay. Fantastic. Sure. With the caveat that all of these numbers are quite preliminary and shared just to give you a sense of order of magnitude. And if you don't hold me down to the number of spot in this instance, I think it is very helpful to share. So in the Grove, because we pick up an extra half bay of parking, this scheme currently shows a few more spots than exist today. It's about 7 spots. Once you have room for trees, once you have room for loading zones, once you take handicap spaces into account, you have about 7 extra spots. If you go to the next slide, go to the Grove with the development on it. I think it's important to caveat the scheme that has housing below, but maintains the Grove above, doesn't fully replace all the parking from the west lot into the east lot. There was a conversation, and maybe it was a closed down option, but that parking specifically had a different place to go. So just to be clear about the numbers, this is more parking in the east lot than exists today, but it's not fully the amount of the west lot. Sorry, I didn't prime you on that, Jeff, before the call.
So what I said was not true. This is a little less parking than before. Do you want to go on to the next scheme, Ben?
Yes.
So
for the center lot, in terms of parking spaces, if you build this as a pretty typical parking deck of about 5 levels, it basically doubles the total amount of parking that's there today, all in this one structure. It's about 400 plus spots.
And even typical these days is to do 5 plus a roof, because this is set back, so you don't see it so much from the street because of the buildings between it and the street. So you could even have another story that was the roof and park even more. Yes.
If you didn't do parking on the roof, it could be a green roof or some other additional public space instead.
Yes, but I'll just warn you that developers almost never do that.
Okay, fair enough.
Has the owner of the Murphy CVS building been engaged in this process at all?
Not at all, and they're
Okay.
being very polite, because I think they're in the room, or the representative of the, and,
You would have saved yourself some time if you'd called
A
or,
lot of money.
yeah, spent a lot of money on something that just isn't possible.
that's fine. These, design is cheap. The public process is expensive, design is cheap. We draw fast and, but it would be good to hear you, if you don't mind, to tell us a little bit more about your complete lack of desire to change the buildings.
Leases
Yeah.
that run for decades,
Yeah,
financing.
Legally, we can't do it.
yeah.
There's no, I mean, you can't ask us to do something that's gonna send us to jail. Sorry. Not happening.
And there'd be no interest, because I mean, I work with developers who are in 40-year leases and stuff all the time. There'd be no interest in them being provided an alternative space that might be better.
They won't find something better than where they are.
Okay. Well, we hope you don't feel insulted that we took the liberty with your lot. This is what we do as designers, is we just show everything. But it's good to know that we no longer have to show these schemes. So this scheme is essentially eliminated, and we thought it would be. Let me tell you why I don't like this scheme. And I told Chris I was going to try and be objective today, but I don't think I can be totally objective. It breaks impartial. It breaks the civic space into 2 spaces. It hides the cinema. It eliminates the connectivity through the site. And so it ultimately creates 2 spaces, one which is strictly a cinema courtyard and the other which is the farmer's market courtyard, and they don't communicate. And it's impossible to have them communicate because you got these 2 ramps doing this in the middle, right? So we did not favor this scheme. You will forgive us that we're going to very quickly flip past other schemes that use your site, but they are unnecessary. So anyhow, that was that scheme. Option 3 is the side lot. This lot solves those problems and only introduces one other problem. So ignore that. Ignore that. What you see here is a deck that's a bit smaller. And I'll let Ben chime in a minute with the statistics on this deck. This deck is accessed from Center Street, and it ramps up and up and up and around. You have a smaller plaza, but one that one hopes is large enough for the farmer's market. But if it's not, that's okay, because all the parking is happening here. So it can spill out, presuming that deliveries are coordinated into these buildings, it can spill out into this larger area as well, because there's no longer any parking demand in this whole area, because it's all happening in the lot. That allows us to develop, I believe the numbers allow us to develop this site as well and park these buildings. You have one new large double loaded corridor residential building here, likely with retail on the ground floor. You have a thin lot liner hiding this parking deck, and you have the same residential scheme here to the west. Ben, do you want to chime in with some numbers on the parking?
Yes, so you'll notice that this garage has a footprint that's a bit smaller than the previous option. A typical height here will provide about 150% of the spots that are there today. So replace everything that's there and then half again for new spots to support parking need and some of this development that's being shown.
So those spots would be then available to these housing units could be more market rate and potentially have parking adjacent to them. Yes, Jen.
I'm just here to be farmer's market girl again. I can't tell, but maybe you with a designer's eye have a better eye. If one were to overlay that plaza space that you've set out there and put it where the market is now, how far up are we on square footage? And then the related question is, right now, and I'm sure you've been to the farmer's market at some point in your years here.
And today,
And today, me too. And so you know how the trucks park around the perimeter and there's 2 aisles and Abe has however many stalls he said there is. How does that functionally work in what looks to me to be a narrower space? So I worry that it could not be a 2-aisle market with the same number
Can
of.
I jump in with some perspective here?
Please, I'm just looking for the information.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the farmer's market as it exists, as you say, people kind of park the car behind the tent. There are many farmers markets that don't work that way, that you park offsite or park a little further away because the market is in a plaza or an open shared space or somewhere that's not a parking lot. So one possibility to get the same amount of stalls here is to configure the operations slightly differently. So you still have 2 aisles of farmers market in this front shared plaza, but the vendors are just not backed up right to their cars. They have to do a little more setup, but it allows for a denser area. Now, if that was not possible or not what you all wanted to do, if you could trace around, basically imagine a U around that central red building, as well as teeing off back behind the arcade building, there's more length of stall than there is in the current kind of U shape on the west lot. So the volume could be replaced in a number of different ways.
Shannon, I think it'd be very useful. After this, we're gonna hand you the stack.
Yeah.
If you talk to folks who are merchants or others and get a sense as to how it might lay out.
Okay, so I can try to do that. I just again, in my experience, particularly with the types of vendors that we have here, and I have been to other markets that are more produce heavy, might be easier to unload vans from a block away or bring them in and bring them out. We have meat vendors and fish vendors and other people who rely on their van space. But
Let
sure,
me
I'm
say
happy to-
there's another version of this that I don't love because I like a space that's well shaped. But this red building could go away.
Well, I don't want it to go away. I like housing too.
Yeah, but I mean, if the red building went away, all of a sudden you have a giant plaza, or it could be something skinnier. But I'd love to keep it. You had a comment.
I do. Do the driving paths that go along the back of the building, does that connect somehow?
Yeah, so
or
this
no?
is paved like a plaza, but this is a continuous
So you can.
delivery alley as before. Then we've widened the sidewalk a little bit as before. We've widened this sidewalk as before. Now, who can guess what I hate about this scheme?
You didn't hide the
From the street.
I didn't lend this. You didn't hide the garage. And remember, hide the parking structures, right? That's really key. So what does that mean? It means we got to do something very sexy with that garage. This is one example. Berkeley, Mayor Riley, who I mentioned before in Charleston, he tells a story about how when he put this garage, which is a garage, on East Bay Street in Charleston, the architect came to him and said that with some very, car language, it looked like a parking deck, and said, "This is what we want to build." And he said, "I don't like that. Can't you make it look like it's inhabited?" And the architect said, "Well, in school, I learned that form follows function." And the mayor said, "Yeah, I learned that too. It's just, we're not going to do that in Charleston." So the problem though, is that, look at this, it's got retail on the ground floor and it's got the flat end up against the street. We do not have that luxury. We have a ramp going up and around and up and around and up and around. So we need some solution that is sexy and nice, but doesn't rely on it being flat. So it has to be something more artistic, like this lot I know the developers of in Dallas. But bear in mind, we're replacing an exposed parking lot, which isn't very nice either, with a deck, which also isn't nice. So it isn't necessarily a step down if the deck is handled well, but I don't know if I would want people to know that I was part of the project.
So if I could just break for a second. First of all, I had said that I need to leave at 4:15, and in fact, step out a quarter on. In fact, I'm now told I don't need to step out until 7:30, so I'm very
Wonderful.
pleased with that. And we have a comment from a member of the public, Eva Deutsch. If you'd like to speak up, that would be great.
Hi, I have a question. In terms of accessing the garage and then paying for parking, will there need to be an attendant? Will there be a gate? Where would people pay for it? How will it be maintained?
Well, I'm not an expert on parking technology, but I can say as a frequent parking user, and someone who works on projects with a lot of garages in them, that the technology keeps getting better. I imagine that there is a gate. I imagine that there will be markings at every level that tell you how many cars spots are available, and that there will be a standard. This is interesting as I look at it. I didn't show it, but there's actually an opportunity with this lot to exit out the back as well as the front, because this is a flat area. So there could potentially be two separate gates. This is not a size garage where we would anticipate there to be too much of a backup. Much larger garages only have one way in and one way out. But I would think that we'd want to take advantage of both access points to the west and to the east, just to maximize the flow through there.
Last
Chris, anything to add on it?
You said at the beginning you were going through these cheapest to more expensive. Is this order of magnitude more expensive than the second one?
No, it's about the same. I mean, the surface lot is obviously the cheapest.
Yeah.
The structured lots are all about the same cost.
Oh, okay.
The most expensive, which is the last scheme, is burying the park.
So, Ian, maybe you would have some insight into whether, or anybody, have some insight into whether including that housing to the right will make this more attractive for development. Because we have to have a, or Brooke for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Well, I think you had a
Yeah, it's a
Question.
question. Is there a way in from the street, from that street? So, thank you. I was gonna say what, so that like CVS and Marucci can get their deliveries
Yeah, so,
without them having to do it on Harvard Street?
yeah, so one thing we've done is trim this corner. There's now something here. We've trimmed this corner to help that access point. This would be a mountable surface.
Okay,
This is a way in, this is a turn, this is a way out. So
okay.
these paths are kind of the same as before.
May I ask you a question? I'm sorry, I don't know your name. Michelle, Mashana. Can those deliveries be time limited in some way? I'm just wondering because you have the plaza.
You'd have to talk to the tenants.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just, because I mean, like, that's a great path for an early morning delivery. And I see trucks there in the early morning, but it's not a great path for a 2 p.m. delivery if a bunch of people are out there having lunch or whatever.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Time. You're talking, the first one's obviously can be done in a year. The others you're talking 10 years,
Chris, it's more of a political question, I would say, that,
20 years.
no,
Are you asking a construction question or a process
First
question?
you have to get through the town, then you have to build it, then you have to find a developer willing to do it. Then he has to finance it.
which that brings back to
But
what
I
is the
think-
Yeah, so,
development standpoint,
right.
this option, and I know the other one's off the table, but the size of this residential building, as it's shown, parking structures are so expensive. If the parking is going to be town parking,
Yeah.
that is not provide profit to the developer, but they have to fund multiple levels of a parking structure. And then I assume the idea would be affordable or somewhat reasonably affordable housing. I don't see any developer signing up to do this because there's no profit for them in there.
Unless that's a very tall apartment building, which I mean, the space, I think, as far as spaces go, could maybe have, because it's not like it's right next to a bunch of low buildings, right?
Right across Beacon Street is a huge building. It's gonna be-
I don't think there's a developer who's gonna step up and say, I want to help pay for the parking structure. If that's what you're asking.
No,
Unless it gives them the
However-
right to build.
however, the presence of a parking structure with additional spaces in it will give a developer confidence that the
The
residential.
residential,
could
it
be
supports the
could be
residential.
market rate.
Absolutely, but I think I was just bringing up the point that in order to bring money in for some sort of public-private partnership, if that is the expectation, because I know funding this is a, piece of this whole conversation, and whether the funds exist in the town budget to pay for the parking piece on its own, the margins on the residential is gonna have to be higher. It's gonna have to come from somewhere, so.
But some of the funding will come from the land itself. I mean, that's valuable land to sell to a developer.
Depends on industry.
Yeah,
I don't know if I have.
So if there could be a ground lease, 100-year ground lease, but that limits your exit options. There's a lot of factors to consider, and it really depends what the project looks like and how many constraints are put on rents and how many affordable units and the height and all of these things that become really political in the town. It's gonna have to pencil to make it and that's just gonna be a challenge that's gonna need, that's not the forum for, today's not the forum for that. There's a lot more detail, but it's something to keep in mind that I think would be a significant challenge.
I think that's a really interesting answer, part of your question. One of the things that we're planning on doing is sending out a request for proposal for whichever of these things really seem to us to make the most sense. And to developers, so they would look at this. With 150 parking spaces, if it costs $50,000 per space, that's $7.5 million for 150 spaces. So just to.
And this is more than that.
Pardon?
This is more than 150.
150 space. Well,
Yeah.
it was.
It's
Oh, that's right. We have 200.
300.
spaces. I'm sorry.
300.
Yeah, it's 300 spaces. All right, so it's 15 million.
Yeah.
And I'm limited to having the garage be private for profit, because then
That makes it less accessible.
But of course-
Yeah, it's a different, which is totally valid, but that, kind of limits what.
Combining residential parking with, daytime shopping parking, there's a significant overlap, but there's a shared value there that makes it more economic. Particularly if some of the people parking in it are workers, right? Because the worker time of parking and the resident time of parking are perfectly complementary. Anyway, that was option 3. Option 4 is the one that I really wish I had for you in 3 dimensions, because it's the most unusual and it's a little hard to picture. But we're going to zoom in here. Option 4 is called the colonnade or the colonnade. And what we're seeing here zoomed in is a similar scheme to the south, or west. Similar condition up against Harvard Street. But in the middle, we have a rather unusual concept, which is a deck on columns. So you imagine 24 columns here, which don't have to be all that large, that are supporting a deck, which is a story and a half up. So it's high enough up so that you get a good head height and it feels nice to be under it. It's served by a speed ramp. So the way a speed ramp works is you're not circulating in the parking spaces, you're circulating in the building. And on the upper floor, what we would have is you would enter the speed ramp here and exit there and enter it here. So you would loop up. Here, it's really important to have those counters on every floor. So when you arrive at a floor, it tells you whether there's spaces on that floor. This speed ramp is hidden within a building that's providing less housing than the previous schemes. But you can see here, there's a liner of housing here, and then there's a larger housing building here that are slapped up against the deck. So from Center Street, you're only seeing a little bit of the deck exposed, but what you're seeing are columns supporting a floating structure that the farmer's market can happen under, as it also spills out into the street. It was made very clear to us that the farmer's market needed to be very visible from Center Street as well. So we imagine it taking both the area under the deck, but also coming forward to the street edge between these two red buildings. Mike, did you have a question?
Yeah, it just occurred to me both with this one and the previous one, that when we look at the amount of housing and the attractiveness based on the number of units to develop it, we should be including the west lot.
Yes, I had that thought too after we had moved on.
Yeah.
The west lot is not huge, but it's
something additional. Yeah.
So I was inspired by the concept of a hypostyle hall. Every architect at one point in school does a building which is floating over just a sea of columns. In this case, you wouldn't need that many columns. You'd only need 24. There's a nice history, of course, of farmers markets tucking under highways and overpasses and other things, that give it shelter. One of the strengths of this scheme, I think, is that it's only one bay wide. So the way the speed ramp works is that this is, you know, at ground level, when there's no farmer's market, this is more parking. I'd like it to be paved nicely, so it isn't just asphalt. But basically you enter here and this is a double loaded, you know, normal parking bay that you can head in park on either side, like any one bay thick, parking, lot. You get upstairs, it's basically the same configuration. And, you know, there's inspiration, Paul Rudolph in New Haven. I think this is a little more clunky and heroic than I would have in mind. My favorite similar scheme, which is barely published, is by our friends at UTL. I don't know if you know Tim Love, who's a wonderful designer. And this is just a proposal that was done for the Make a Better Burb competition. And these are precast, you know, this was cast in place, quite expensive. These are precast arches that you can place in two directions that when you combine them, create a really wonderful, you know, underneath space. And in our case, it would only be one bay wide. So there'd be a lot of light coming in from either side. What you're seeing here is multiple bays wide. But this is the experience at the ground level. And then up above, of course, you have the deck floating, again, lined by housing in this direction. You still have the full service lane coming around the back. It's still one continuous social space, and the farmer's market gets a roof.
How does that compare in number of spots to what's some would be the first one or what's currently there?
Ben, how many spaces of this is 5 stories or 6 stories?
This is very similar to the side lot scheme. Again, it's about 150% the spaces that are there today in both lots.
So I think if this is done right, it could be a real, you know, icon for Brooklyn. Yes.
I have one other question, if you can go back to just the sketch of it. So I'm noticing that there's no widening of the sidewalks along the parking side of those buildings. There's no.
Those are wider. So we've added 6 feet. We've added 6 feet to the sidewalks.
But no trees, or is it just that picture doesn't have trees?
They're missing from the picture. We would want, yeah. In fact, Ben, a note is that when we widen that sidewalk, we need to show the trees to line it.
Because I think that visually, just looking at this now, that affects my.
Yeah, you're totally right. And in fact, one of the things that we discussed in the sidewalk was how just if you add 6 feet to that sidewalk, you can have a continuous row of trees up against the building.
And then I noticed in one of the other sketches, I think the Rockville Center one, there was talk about being able to close it off for other things as well. I imagine that's something that could be part of this scheme. Like it could be more parking when it's needed, but it also could be.
Well, what's great is the speed ramp to the upstairs will always be there.
Right.
So you'll have 4 to 5 stories of parking no matter what, and 1 story in addition that you can use for other things. So that's this scheme. And then finally, take out your wallets, ladies and gentlemen. Option 5, the underground. If we could build bigger buildings, if money was no object, we would dig. And we dig down probably 2 stories. And what you see here is a ramp that can be entered off, it would be entered actually here from Center Street. And you rotate down 1 story and then you've got 2 bays of parking, and you rotate another story, you get 2 bays of parking. You have a tunnel under Center Street, and then underneath the building, which is located on this side of the pedestrian walk, you have even more parking. So this is what that looks like. Ignore that version. Zooming in. So so please close your eyes, the gentleman, the folks from CVS, because I presumed that this version was so fancy and expensive that we would expect the CVS and Maruichi to be replaced. Looking at it here, what do we have? We have pretty much the same condition to the west, but we have parking underneath this, right? We have an entry here to a parking lot where you're going down, 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 and entering that underground scheme where now there's parking all under here and under here. Now you have.
Sorry, Marion's got her hand up for the question. So
question?
Yeah, Marion?
So what happens with snow? Because most of the places you picked have been southern or dry, California, Arkansas, Florida. Because snow doesn't get picked up here, it gets shoveled to the side. So I'm wondering about that, and I'm still wondering about the sidewalk path, because we've gotten rid of the sidewalk that goes from Center Street to Harvard Street. We're making people, what's the path?
It's still there.
That's there.
None of that is
well,
covered.
No, it's
In Marion's defense,
This one.
I probably pretty much obliterated it here.
Okay, that one.
So one, you can see how there's room, and thank you for that note, because we'll make sure that it's included in the schemes. I think it is important, very important for pedestrian access, to include something there. Although there's also going to be this access through, which we'll talk about. But there's certainly nothing wrong with, and there's benefits to maintaining a cut through in this location, because the block is so big, right? So having more pedestrian cut throughs makes sense. Snow, I can tell you, I did show a bunch of Florida examples, but these are schemes that are, that follow principles and spacing, distances, curb width, sidewalk depths, which are pretty standard all around the country and in Canada. So yes, there may need to be a little more skill and care taken to snow removal, but these certainly are not southern schemes, if you're curious about that.
The only place where snow removal becomes a significant factor is his first option, where you've got a lot of trees in the way of just, plowing the whole.
What's interesting about the first option, though, is that there's no curbs. So actually, you can push the snow, as long as you miss the trees, you can just push the snow any which way you want.
Right.
You wouldn't want people parking in it during a snow emergency, as is usually the case. Yeah.
Right.
So I know this sort of breaks from the 5 you've shown us, but the option 4 you were showing that had the big arches with the raised parking, was there any consideration given to having something that goes over Center Street to connect to that other?
No. I don't think that would be possible.
So we wouldn't be able to put any elevated parking in the west lot, the smaller lot.
Well, I don't think I'd recommend. I would.
That wasn't even a farmer's market question. I was just wondering, because I saw the tunnel, I saw the tunnel in option 5, and I'm like, wait a minute, if you can go underground and put parking there, could you go above ground and put parking there?
You could tee this thing all the way across the street. And it would look like Mass General Medical Center, in fact. So I would recommend.
Or the government center parking garage.
It just got broken in half because people didn't like the parking lot crossing.
That's why I don't, you would do what you do.
One thought that hasn't been brought up yet that affects all the options, but particularly underground one. Constructability of this and access to this area during that time period. So going underground, you would need greater clearances, digging, and like if it's a lot of the same size, you're gonna need so kind of get into that drive lane, and it's gonna be more impactful for the buildings.
Right. The time that even if everything went smoothly, this.
You'd be out of operation for a long time.
Right.
If you, some of the other options where you're going above ground and you still have the west lot, you can like phase it. I could envision phasing it where you're building above ground parking, and then you're parking in the west lot while that's going on, and there's still some parking. It's less, but it's for the greater good of this future project. This one, from a constructability standpoint, I would have real concerns with, besides the cost factor that we've.
Just as we felt free to show the CVS going, we wanted to show every possibility.
Yeah, no.
I'm sure there's some we missed, right?
Did you? Go on.
So this all hinges on getting a developer to come in and do this. If nobody ponies up, can the town afford to do any of these options if it's just town money?
I think the answer is the $15 million garage, maybe. The $45 million underground,
I guess that's another point of this process is once we pick the 3, there are cost estimates, and then the funding piece,
We
follows.
not to show our hand, but we didn't really expect this to be one of the three. Yeah,
So with that, that just kind of plays off. So if this isn't one of the three,
And two's not
and
one.
2 is not one of them, and there were issues with number 3, will you be tweaking them? If like say we end up with 1, 3, and 4 is what we ask you to do more of.
Mhm.
Will you be able to tweak them
absolutely.
to, okay?
In response to all the good things we're learning today, and we
Okay.
will learn from you. Yes.
And
And all the time, it's gonna take to do anything but number 1. Where's everybody gonna park?
That's a good question.
We're talking years.
Well, it shouldn't be.
There's a,
Build an apartment building, build a parking garage.
can I answer that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one option is the open, Waldo Durgan site.
I'm sorry, the what?
The Waldo Durgan site, which is currently open. That option only lasts as long as that site is open. Which actually is an interesting spur to making up our minds about what the heck we're gonna do with anything.
What is interesting is that in those schemes, for example, the side lot option and the column lot option, it's rather a limited footprint.
Right.
So I venture to say more than half, maybe 2/3 of the parking will still be accessible. So it will be growing pains, but it's not a complete shutdown.
And you just make sure in that case that the parking is the first thing built and then
Absolutely,
you
yeah.
do the buildings after the fact.
You build the parking first, then everyone's like super happy. with it.
Right.
Is it now the right point to suggest a different option? Can I?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like to suggest a different approach to the project. An approach of dividing the project into 2 different phases. In phase 1, develop a parking structure in the west lot. Only the west lot, don't touch the
Sure.
east lot. So in phase 1, only develop the west lot and provide, build a parking structure in that area such that in phase 2, parking has already been provided and there is this big area between the east lot that can be developed as needed at that time or as advised at that time because there will be parking provided as needed. Why are you showing the big dig again?
I'm showing. Let's do it for it. I'm showing the big dig because unfortunately, this is about all the parking you can fit per level in the west lot, and it doesn't really rank. So,
Doesn't look to me that with multiple levels you cannot match the existing supply of parking.
You can't put a ramp.
ramping, you can't really ramp it, and even if you could, I think it would need about 10 levels to increase the amount of
The
parking.
footprint.
I hate to say no, but I don't see it fitting here.
how about,
Well, okay, I'm not convinced, but I think there is a great benefit to the town for first developing one part of the project. And I think it will be the west part, the west lot. And if you can determine that you are now looking only on the side to the right of the axis that you have identified. But if you take also the area on the left, then you have a greater area.
No, this is actually the full lot, the triangle.
Oh, okay. But there is no point arguing about that because I haven't done any calculations here and you have. And so if you're saying that 10 levels will be required, maybe. But anyhow, I think there is great advantage to having the project divided into such 2 phases. Well,
I would agree with your strategy, but I think that strategy then would pertain to the place where the lot is located, which probably has to be on the east side.
Yeah.
If I could, I'd like to finish explaining this thing before we throw it out. Which is just to say that imagining it developed very densely, but there's a couple fun things happening. One is the access through the arcade becoming an archway through the building, and the other is the opportunity for 2 taller pieces of building, one here and one there, which this indicates preserving that access that already exists, adding the access through the arcade, through the building, and then imagining some sort of archway through the building, bigger, smaller, huge. You all know Rose Wharf.
Yeah.
Maybe it was something more like this, but again, we presented this scheme with the expectation that it would be rejected.
Well, I mean, do we really know that no developer would be interested in sinking the money into something like that? If they can have a nice.
That I think would pencil out for a developer probably. Did 2 levels of underground parking happens all the time. We did a 79 unit condo building in Brighton with 2 levels of underground parking. The bigger concern is that that's a much longer project, and then you do have kind of you're in close quarters, and if you're digging down, it just gets more complicated on how you park everybody in the inside.
Digging
don't know
this
what's down there.
would pretty much obliterate your parking supply
Yeah.
while it was happening.
And
you
it
don't
would
know what-
impact local
you don't know
businesses
the
and-
ledge, you
yeah.
don't, I mean, at this point, you don't know anything.
Right,
So you really
would
don't
do,
even know what's possible or what's,
any developer before they close on it would
right,
require exploratory,
Right.
borings and stuff like that. That work would take time, and it's not, to me, the concern, this is has the most upside for a developer if it pencils out, but it's the most intrusive to the neighborhood.
Yeah, this one would require a longer term alternative.
and we also have to be sensitive of the businesses that are currently there.
Yeah.
We can't disrupt their lives because we're gonna lose business.
Yeah.
And then Coolidge Corner won't have anything. So it's like that, you've got to weigh it out to see what is realistic, not only money and time, but in terms of their lives and their livelihoods.
Yeah.
We don't want to turn people away.
And that's why I think the underground is much more disruptive to those businesses than above ground. Construction is construction, nobody loves it, but digging and especially blasting ledge, if it were to come to that, all of that is much more disruptive than going up.
And Ben, you have a comment?
Yes, I'd love to jump in here to provide apples to apples on parking count for the underground structure, as well as one note about construction process for the underground parking structure. So you'll notice that the underground structure, because we can't build right up to the building line, is not 3 bays of parking, it's 2 bays of parking. So one level does not completely replace the parking that's there today. It gets you to about 80, 90%. And so that's why we need 2 levels to fully replace and provide additional parking for development, which, puts you at 160, 180%. And then the other thing to note is that the underground parking structure could be phased construction east lot and west lot. So you could do the east lot first or second, and then open the tunnel later on. Just additional food for thought.
Well, you'd have to do the east lot first because it's got the ramp.
Yes, you would have to do the east lot
Yeah.
first.
I just want to highlight something that I think Marion raised at our last meeting, which is even if it's not actual, there's a perceived safety concern with underground parking.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was you, Marion.
Yeah, that was
I
me
think,
actually.
you was you,
Yeah,
Marion?
that's right.
I was, sorry,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Marion. I'm
That-
taking
but
credit like
Mary
you did tonight.
concurred,
Yeah.
She-
Okay.
yeah.
People
But-
feel less safe in the dingy basement part.
All right, sorry, Mike, you
Yeah.
get the credit.
No,
but-
that's, that.
So I want to summarize, if I may, just because we are basically done, that these are but we do have a little chart that compares
Right.
each option. Here's all the options. Option 1 is the Grove. Option 2 is the rejected impossible center lot. Option 3 is the side lot. Option 4 is the floating lot. And option 5 is the big dig. So here they are compared. So we looked at 8 different criteria. We want a scheme that adds parking. We want a scheme that upgrades the farmer's market. We want a scheme that allows new development, particularly housing. We want more green space. We don't want to redevelop the CVS and the Maruichi. We want to not expose parking to Center Street. And we want to create a continuous public realm through the different parts of the neighborhood. And then finally, we want it to be affordable. So if you look at these 8 criteria across the 5 options, in terms of adding additional parking, the Grove does not. It's a little bit less parking than both lots together.
Well, that's what the point that I wanted to make about mixing and matching, because if you don't put housing here, leave that lot.
Mhm. If you leave the southern lot undeveloped, the west lot undeveloped. It's more south than west, but fine. If you leave that lot undeveloped, you end up with a little more parking.
Is that one that we would be able, I know. we Have only so much resources to visualize, 3 options, but since one with the west lot developed is not that different than one without the west lot developed, do you think you'd be able to kind of keep both of those in the running for now?
Yes, but I would add that the west lot undeveloped solves your farmer's market problem. If you're concerned about circulating around the farmer's market in the larger part.
Well, I'm going on memory because I don't remember what these, but I recall correctly, 4 had the west lot developed because you didn't need that space for the farmer's market.
Correct.
Correct? Mhm.
Yeah.
And was it developed basically the same way it would have been developed for the Grove?
Mm-hmm.
So if 1 and 4 are both in the running, is there a way to take the work you do on option 4?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the only thing I would say with that is the add-on piece then for option 1 is you have like a 1A and a 1B, where B is where it's developed is we need to do some thinking about how the farmer's market fits in
Mhm.
to the east lot and what happens to traffic circulation and are the remaining spots after the farmer's market's there more or less or the same as the remaining spots we have now when the market takes up the west lot. And I think it's a little less, but
Understood.
I'm guessing option 1 is one of the things you're going to be just a feeling that.
I have that feeling as well. Next, let me just plow through this and we'll be done. Next, if you look at all the options, provides upgraded space for farmers market. Option 1, it's upgraded in the sense that it's got electricity and storage, but that's about it. The other options make it more prominent on plazas and squares, or in the case of option 4, actually sheltered. But there are some issues regarding size and configuration. Shanna, as you mentioned, maybe some of the squares don't fit your goals. And so we'd like you to look into that.
Right.
Next point, adds new development. The side lot scheme and the colonnade scheme both add a limited amount of new development, but not a ton. And I would say probably the side lot scheme adds a little more than the colonnade, but they're about the same. Of course, the underground provides a ton of new development, but we're scared of that appropriately. Adds green space. The surface parking lot adds mostly trees and drainage under trees. The other developments all add, social space, which is going to be partly green, partly paved, will include trees, but it's a better public realm than a parking lot, however nice the parking lot. We must not require the redevelopment of 294 to 306 Harvard Street. So I believe that means option 2 is out the window. Keeps parking edge off Center Street. That is my concern about the side lot, which you see scores no points in this category because it puts that parking structure up against Center Street. Creates a continuous public realm. The Grove is a continuous public realm, but it's still a parking lot. So we didn't give it a star for that. The center lot we didn't like because it interrupted that public realm. The others are all excellent in that way. And then finally, in terms of economics, the Grove is the best because there's no structure. The side lot and the colonnade are pretty much equivalent because you have to build a parking deck. Underground is super expensive and the center lot is out. So that's our overall assessment. You can add the stars if you like, but we didn't feel that it was necessarily weighted properly. So we didn't want to add up the stars. We don't know, some are non-starters and some are just one halves. So we didn't add the stars up, but this hopefully allows you to better understand your choices. So here we say thank you, and we are able now to look at the different options at your convenience.
Joy, and then Ann.
With the side lot one, I know that like Marucci and CVS aren't in play, but like above Pure Cold Press, the hair salon and Rami's, that's also single story and there's that private parking space. So could you do something to like better utilize, like if you like somehow connect that space and build above there or something?
Well, you wouldn't, there's not enough room for more structured parking in this slot, for
Yeah.
example. Actually, I hadn't thought of that. I suppose it's possible that this parking lot could make an L over here. It would block the windows of Spec Dempsey. That's something we need to talk about. Full disclosure of possible conflict of interest. But there's, I don't know what the party wall requirements are for these businesses, which all have windows.
Well,
Including
only the second floor has windows, right? But
second
yeah.
floor has windows. Yeah, I mean, this space could be better used. My expectation is that these businesses really like their parking, their private parking.
I mean, I park there,
Yeah.
so.
But how do you feel about, how much do you like that?
Well, I mean, I don't know what your experience with the rats, it is the Brookline parking situation, but I mean, it's a parking spot you can pay for, so that's nice.
Yeah.
I was trying to pull it up on my phone. I don't have my computer, but last month we saw a sketch basically that somebody that Alan Christ had done that had a lot of elements that, particularly as I recall, in terms of thinking about staging of the whole thing. And I'm just wondering, I know that you saw that, I'm just wondering whether any of that stuff was incorporated into any, or can be incorporated into any of these.
It's a little bit.
Chris is pulling it up in her mind.
I think it
It had a lot of
might be a little
sort of
number 3.
pedestrian
Yeah, I mean, some,
space in the middle. Action.
and connecting the arcade and,
Yeah.
That's why I felt like if the whole parking, like if the side about it could be like L.
While you're doing that, I want to take a comment from Moshe. Go ahead, Moshe.
Yeah, my comment is about or question is about all the options. What happens to Coolidge Corner parking at Coolidge Corner when the east lot is under construction?
Well, that's what I'm saying earlier, that for at least for the moment, the potential is there to use the open space that will someday be developed as part of the Waldo Durgan, or will be the Waldo Durgan development. So it puts it over behind, so between Pleasant Street and Beacon and Harvard.
And then we would be, for any structured parking, we'd be constructing that first, in
Yeah.
theory, so then it would be a fairly
Right,
short
whatever
window
parking
before
is,
then.
right, whatever.
I'm,
parking-
I'm not familiar. I mean, is it the other side of Beacon Street?
No, it's not the other side of Beacon Street. It's the other side of Harvard Street.
I mean, can you show it on the map?
it's not on these drawings. It's, you know, the building, the garage they took down on Pleasant Street?
No, I don't.
It's the other side of Harvard Street.
Oh, the other side of Harvard Street.
It's behind the storefronts along
Yeah, behind the
Harvard and
books.
Beacon.
Behind the Booksman.
It's behind the Booksmith. Yeah.
And it can accommodate 200
Oh.
300.
Big space. Think so.
I don't know, but we could certainly find out.
Yeah.
So I think there are two things that needs to be found out here. One is my suggestion of developing first the west lot. So I would like to know what is the maximum if you construct the parking structure in the west lot, what will be the maximum number of spots that can be accommodated in such a structure? What is the maximum number of level that is possible? And what will be the maximum number of spots that can be accommodated in that area? I think because if there is no alternative to the east lots that provide the same amount of parking, then building or constructing the east lot may not be feasible because Coolidge Corner continue to operate. I mean, people need to come to find parking spaces. So we need to find out also what is the maximum number of spots that can be on the other side of Harvard. I'm not familiar with the location, but maybe you need to estimate what will be the number of parking that are available there. Once we know that, then maybe we can determine whether any of these options are feasible, because without providing parking, then none of the options will be feasible.
Moshe, I think we already heard that we'd be talking about something like 10 or 12 stories of parking with not a lot of ramp space for the west lot. which I don't want to speak on behalf of anyone in the neighborhood, but I don't think anyone in the surrounding buildings would go for a 12-story parking garage directly behind them. I don't see how developing the west lot first is any better than putting a garage on half of the east lot first.
Okay, my question was, what will be the maximum acceptable number of parking spots that can be accommodated in that spot? So maybe not all the necessary parking spot can be accommodated there, but maybe together with a lot on the other side of Harvard and with a smaller, not 10 stories, but maybe only 5 or 6 story lot in the west lot can provide the necessary parking while the east lot is being redeveloped.
I'm really not understanding, why would you want to build a garage on the west lot that presumably would take as much time as it would take to build the garage on the east lot?
Because
And displace the same number of parking spots.
So
I'm just not understanding why we would do that.
the issue is, Moshe is concerned that there isn't a place to replace, even temporarily, the east lot. And Moshe, I don't know, I'm looking at a Google satellite view of the empty space now that's behind the Booksmith. And it's differently shaped, but it would be pretty close to a replacement, I think. Okay, now, obviously, there are a lot of things that have to be considered, like whether the property owner is willing. Depends on what their schedule is for Waldorf Durgan. They might be very pleased or they might be horrified. So we have some homework to do. You're absolutely right. But let's do the homework before we close anything out.
I think we also need to keep in mind the parking study. Just thinking of the Marriott garage.
Yeah,
I went in there on Saturday and there was over 100 parking spaces empty.
yeah, could we,
Like, people need to be aware that this is an option, and I don't think they
Yeah,
are.
a little further away, but.
yeah, but
So-
also the town could maybe just have a deal with the Marriott during construction. We give them some amount of money for some number of spots that are town rate instead.
I haven't
They're not
tried,
allowed to charge more than town rate.
For
the
2 hours, yeah.
but I've been told from some businesses on Beacon Street that their customers, and this is during the week, have been told that they don't have parking spaces for public.
At the Marriott.
At the Marriott.
Yeah, the Marriott makes everything very difficult. They also, people never know about the park behind it or anything. They
So-
really don't like.
Well, that's a different issue.
Publicize
We have a formal agreement that says
There's
that
a-
we can't park.
Yeah,
No,
there's
but
a-
I tried to
Formal
read
agreement
that
doesn't
today.
help the random customer who thinks
I
they can.
I
I
meant.
can
that
go-
we-
Okay, hold on,
They're
hold on,
gonna
hold on,
acknowledge the
hold on,
town
hold on.
that this is available. If Marriott's not doing it themselves.
Guys, Mike needs his gavel.
Yeah, I don't normally need a gavel for these meetings. So let's go one at a time. I think we're trying to solve too many problems. Our task is to say, well, which of these things do we want to rule out? And so option 2 obviously falls out.
Yeah.
And the question is, as you think about it, does option 1, I think everybody would say, well, yeah, we kind of have to say that we include that.
By the way, Ava Deutsch has her hand up.
Okay, I'll come to her in just a second. But then we have 3, 4, and 5 that we have to think about.
And I just want to, if you don't mind, Mike, you were asked about this other scheme that was presented, and yes, we looked at it, and it's very similar to the side lot option. There's a lot of great ideas in here that I'm not sure are possible. For example, slapping retail up against the backs
Right.
of the 7 subs and doing other things that, and then the main thing that we didn't see as possible is essentially pedestrianizing the whole service area. Or at least that's how it's described. Now, we like places that are flexible, that might be pedestrian sometimes and not other times. Maybe that was the intention here. But there are a lot of good ideas here that we did consider and that are very similar to what you find in the side lot scheme.
So now I need to apologize and step out for a few minutes.
My,
The
can I borrow someone's agenda?
the virtual gavel is handed to you.
Here's my gavel. All right.
So we have option 1, which is in play. Option 2 is not. And then there's the side lot option, the floating lot option, and I think this option is no longer in play. Option 5,
I mean.
the big dig option.
Okay.
Can
Yeah,
I
and
ask,
you wanted to get
I want to ask Brooke a question about
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Okay.
so go ahead.
If we have Waldo Durgan and Marriott and the I understand the political reality, but
Yeah.
the actual reality is there is parking. If you reacted in a way, like I will have another column, which is most likely to be attractive to the developer who would actually build the thing.
Mhm.
That sounds like option 5, the big dig, is attractive potentially.
Yes.
To developers. So if we could solve the where do we park during construction problem, is it worth considering?
I think it is. My big question with this would be, it's shown all residential. We are just looking at the footprints from a developer's perspective. There can be a lot of questions of like, what are the how high can we go? Is retail allowed on the first floor too, or is this all and some commercial use, or is it all residential? I think it's the most different. I think 3 and 4, there's a good amount of overlap there. So I think if we're trying to like cast a wide net and really consider 3 different options, doing one, either 3 and 4 or 5 gives you the most variety when we go into the next step. But I don't know if we really think that 3 or 4 are more feasible, then maybe 5 is a way out.
You're going under a load,
Pardon?
gas, electric, everything else you have to deal with.
Yeah, but that is,
Sewer lines, everything's what, 150 years old?
you're going through we go to the underground, the tunnel, the
Big dig.
big dig option, just where you're crossing the street. You're not going across the street in the whole. Yeah, so it's a trench. So you're not going,
It's a deep trench, you're going,
Right,
you're undercutting everything.
but depending on how much flexibility you have, if you survey where the utilities are, if you could move that to the right 20 feet, like if you're gonna
They're gonna be running right down.
go parallel, yeah. like if
There are pipes and things crossing that.
Yeah,
So that's could be a real issue depending on
Yeah.
how deep they are. They would have to be probably
rerouted, yeah.
rebuilt a little higher or a little lower.
Yeah.
Ideally,
It might be
they'd be in the structure, above head height,
Right.
but below the ground.
Like cheaper to do a lot.
Yeah.
Oh,
it-
that's
it's
It might be
actually-
cheaper
Cheaper to do another level
3
on the
levels
east block.
Yeah.
on the
That's
east.
sick.
side.
That actually, that probably would make people feel more comfortable parking wise also, instead of walking down that. tunnel.
Yeah, and it's incredible.
Well, you can exit from either side.
Oh.
But like, I think that's all stuff to consider as we advance this forward. And this is not very preliminary at this point, but I do think it's a valid point that you raised about, the attractability here. But like, if the only way any of this gets done is a private-public partnership, then the, appeal to the private piece of that is, worth considering.
They're gonna wanna do it without cutting across the street, if
Yep.
they do it at all, yeah.
Yeah, could we modify option 5 to see what it looks
Uh-huh.
like with 3
But what-
levels instead,
what-
or?
Yeah, I mean, my main question, I guess, would be, it's not maybe my question to ask, but yes, a developer might be able to. Might want to invest very heavily
Mhm.
in creating spaces that are very valuable. But that still doesn't cover the cost of this replacement spaces for the town of Brookline. Who may not want to be spending that much per space to replace them. Or may not have the capacity to spend that.
I thought the idea was that whoever is developing the buildings on top also is gonna pay for the parking.
Well, that would be great, and you're the one who might be able to.
Right,
say
no,
what-
that's what I'm saying. I
possible.
think this is the only so I think if you allow somebody this much room to build this many buildings and they're going 2 or 3 stories underground, you have a chance that they can bake that into the cost of the development. I think if it's the side lot option, and you're doing 5 stories above ground in a small residential building, they're not gonna be able to absorb the
Enough units.
$15 million costs.
And will they be able to supply the spaces at town rates?
Potentially, that's where you have to look into like how many stories can they go up? What are they allowed to charge? How many market rate apartments are they having versus affordable? It's gonna be a giant math problem. And once there's more details, I'm happy to might assist with that. But based on what we're looking at now, I can't, confirm or deny that.
Are you gonna allow them to charge for the parking that they're putting in?
I think the town's preference is no. So that needs to then be offset somehow with, other incentives. It's a big math problem. It's,
Yeah.
if something's gonna have to give somewhere, and politically, I know it's not favorable to say we're gonna go 10 stories high. It's also not favorable to say we're gonna increase the cost of parking or to say we're gonna, but one of those things is gonna have to give, and it's just kind of a question of what everybody's priorities are on. And if it's keeping parking the same cost, then maybe it can be a more, an 18% affordable project, not a 50% affordable project, or it can be 10 stories instead of 4 stories, or, something somewhere can, be a compromise.
Brooke, with the side lot one, would it ever make sense to a developer, like if they could go up and down? So like they did some parking underground and maybe they can rent that like monthly, so there'd be overnight, and then above ground would be like town municipal.
Underground is more expensive to build than
Yeah.
above ground, but I don't think two layers of parking on their own is gonna justify the cost. I don't know, and if you have municipal parking there, I don't know if there's enough demand for that as like an isolated use.
Well, but if you think of all the people like paying for parking in Brooklyn, where they're paying like $200 a spot or whatever a month. And they'd be able to, so
Oh,
they have
you're
privately
not
owned
talking about
underground.
like people visiting Village Corner. You're
No,
talking about
I'm
really like
talking
renting
about-
out
So
spots.
they'd have spots that they could rent, like say
Yeah.
go down and you have to have like a permit or whatever that,
Yeah.
they do. And then going straight and up would be the like hourly town
Maybe it's like VPNE and some of those parking providers would be able to speak better to that than I do. I'm not familiar with the parking provisions like on its
What the
own.
True Lot does, for like the Mandarin,
Mhm.
there's a fob, and that's how you get into that parking, but you go through their garage.
Okay,
So
And
if
same
I'm
over
going there to shop, I
Yeah.
have to pay, but if you live at the Mandarin, you don't.
right. That makes sense.
Pay
Yeah,
for
I
it.
just can't speak to like how much,
Yeah.
if it's $200 a
Space
spot
a month.
per month, what the returns are, if that
Yeah.
offsets the cost of underground parking. Cause
I also don't pay.
It
I'm
may
not in
offset
that
the cost of,
business.
it may offset the cost of structured parking. It would not offset the.
It would not.
Below
it
ground,
would-
yeah.
Yeah,
The below
but
ground is more than
it's
twice.
just,
as
so they'd
expensive.
have the side part, it's just like one more way to make revenue into it.
Right, so, I'm sorry, was that something you wanted to? No, okay.
Only if you can sell the parking spaces, then you
Right.
can,
So then, and that's the question of splitting up some of the parking spaces the developer does have for their own, either whether it's the residents or whatever. So I just have a couple of comments on, you said 3 and 4 have overlap, and I'm thinking in terms of when we have to go to interacting with the
Yeah.
public on these, and I actually think 4 is so different from what people are familiar with.
Mhm.
That I see the overlap for us now that we've had this conversation, but I think 4 really needs to be visualized for people,
Okay.
maybe. And I'm sort of torn because I already hear neighbors who've said to me, why not a garage? Why not underground? Why not leave it as a parking lot? And once you do those 3, it leaves off showing 4, which is the different interesting thing. So I'm very torn as between 3, 4, and 5, because if we don't explore the garage, somebody's gonna say, why didn't you explore the garage? I wonder though with
You mean the
3,
underground, you mean the underground?
yeah, why the underground? Sorry. People say, why didn't you explore the underground? I wonder though with 3 and or 4, again, going into that, Julia, that side lot and blocking Spec Dempsey's beautiful view into that parking lot. Whether that is a way to get more parking.
That's what I thought, if it
Yeah.
became an
Well,
L-shaped.
The
But
point I would make,
is
I
it-
think, is that
Mhm.
you don't need it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Like, both of these schemes are providing 50% increase in parking. So you don't need more parking to turn the corner.
Okay.
But then could it also be more developed? Like, I guess it's,
But
Can't be
this,
something.
this,
Yeah.
this site here could be more developed.
Yeah.
Or more green space or something, cause like, I don't know that
I've
that's the
always thought
best.
that was such a great beer garden type.
You know,
space.
Yeah, like some-
what we propose in other communities where we don't know the owners is, we'll give them shelter spaces in the lot in exchange for them to give up their own little private
Yeah.
parking lot. It now, because we're right there and we're maybe a little too close and can't see the big picture, I feel like that might be a struggle, but it might be worth looking into.
Yeah, I think.
Leader management.
That's leaders.
Marion has had her hand up.
Oh, yeah, and I can't see who has their hands up, so please, somebody unmute Marion.
I don't think we have to unmute her.
Yeah, Mary, go ahead.
To state the obvious, I do think we have to work worry about killing the golden goose. With Coolidge Corner is the golden goose for Brookline at the moment, and what makes it attractive is that it's not big city. It's that it is walkable and it's not overwhelming with walkways and whatever. It's comfortable. The other thing, I'm just stating the obvious as a resident, but hear it from me as a resident. One is parking is $300 a month. I mean, we're charging, people are paying $250, $300. If we're underground, it would definitely be $300 a month. But this is not just a residential, commercial area. This is also a residential area. And I think you need to think about that. I think looking at the discussions that took place about the Harvard Street MBTA plan is of interest. People are not going to just throw it away. So, I mean, this looks like, I like the townhouse thing. I love it. And I like underground parking, and I would in fact like to be able to buy a parking space, not to rent it. I don't, that's my fantasy, that the developer could sell to local people who don't have parking. But I just think we need a broader view. And Meredith, I think, I'm looking at you, I think it's really important that we keep an eye on what's happening with the bridle path, what's happening with, the handicapped accessibility. There are a lot of spaces that are being lost. And there is a dearth of parking now. People are complaining. The senior center has a problem with lack of parking. So to say it's going to increase it by 50%, again, it might increase the current need so that people aren't driving around. Okay, that's it.
Yes, Lennon.
Is the town likely going to need to pay for the parking garages for options 3 and 4? Is that most
Pretty much.
Probably.
Okay,
There's
so-
a lot of different, but there's also, if a developer's not, there's so many different ways to structure that. But like, there would be some lease fee or some value of the land if you're allowing a developer to build on town land. Whatever, whether that's an upfront payment or a, lease payment, there will be revenue back to the town for the value of the land.
Okay. So the town has a history of not wanting to pay for parking garages. So with the Driscoll School, there was going to be a parking garage, and then it was decided that it was too expensive. So there's no parking garage at Driscoll. And then I think also at the high school, they're
Going to go into the field.
underground, also too expensive. So I don't know if 3 and 4 are especially feasible. I don't think it'll pass through town meeting.
We need to look at it.
I think we need to look at them. I was almost convinced that we should maybe not even, I almost don't want to look at option 1.
You don't want to live it up?
Well, only because I feel like we all know what parking lots look like, and we all know what parking lots look like with a few extra trees, and people don't know what those cool archway things look like. But, yeah,
I feel the same way. Personally, if we convene all this, the firepower in the room, like the knowledge in the room, if what we come out with is a parking lot with more trees, I will be very disappointed, and I will feel that I am not representing my constituency. And so there's a version of number 1 with housing, which I like, and maybe the housing could add some more commerce or whatever, but I mean, I understand why this proposal is here. It has to be here. I don't find this to be I don't find this to be representing the interests of the people who will live in Brookline for the next several generations, for whom we are now making decisions.
I think someone needs to speak up on behalf of the parking study that did make it very clear that if there wasn't a parking problem, there was a wayfinding problem.
Yes.
And I know from personal experience, when you go to Coolidge Corner, you can find a spot probably in the Center Street lot. And so that's where you go. And if you can't, then you get really pissed off because you don't know where you're going to go next. And so I think that with proper wayfinding and other efforts to direct people elsewhere. You know, the parking study was done, it was funded, and it was done professionally by a good firm who did say that maintaining the number of spots or increasing the number of spots in this lot was not functionally necessary.
The wayfinding efforts, assuming that that's like signage and relatively low cost fixes. I think this is probably a question that goes beyond this committee, but I wonder if there's a way that we can start implementing those sooner rather than later, so that if that problem gets better and there's less of a perception that there's this lack of parking, that some of these other options could be better received because there's not, you know, as much stress about the parking situation.
Do you know, Zach, the Economic Development Department has submitted an application to some state department to do
Yeah.
exactly that, to start implementing some of the ideas in the parking study. Do you have any idea whether we've heard anything
I
about
don't
it?
have any update on the status, but I do know that that was submitted.
Was it 50,000? I don't know
That sounds
the
about
amount,
right.
something
Yeah.
like that, but that is hopefully gonna
Okay.
happen.
Because it would be great to get out ahead of that and then have some of those changes take place before the larger town, you know, weighs in on these options.
I think in the same spirit, one of the things I've already learned from being on this committee is that we price parking in a very irrational way. Parking is the same price, whether it's the most prime spot right behind the Commerce or whether it's 3 blocks away. That makes no sense. We've also learned that it pays to park your car here and go to a Red Sox game and take a risk of getting a ticket. Because it's only $25, you may not get one anyway. That is profoundly irrational. So I think it would help this process if we moved on that as well. The price of parking, we also need to rationalize along with wayfinding before we get too far down the road, because it affects our assumptions about how much parking there actually is. I mean, I just have to give a plug. I read a book that talked about induced demand in parking, and I thought that was brilliant. You know, right. So we should also take account of that reality. That, you know, we could keep building parking forever, and that will encourage lots of people to drive and park. But
Well,
we
of
could
course, the
also be balanced.
conversation in the planner sphere is about autonomous vehicles and how parking's gonna go away. Private parking's gonna go away. I personally don't see that happening soon.
That seems extreme. Right.
Yeah.
I'm putting on my vice chair hat for a minute and noting that we're already after 7:45. And I could definitely keep going here for a long time. But I don't know if we have other people with hands up because I don't have a computer in front of me.
There's no one with a hand up on Zoom.
All right, I don't know how much more time we wanna keep talking versus moving on to the next.
So the objective is to get down to 3. Can I ask that? I did a lot of stuff with underground parking many, many years ago, like at Post Office Square and stuff. And when you have that, you have huge buildings around it.
Mhm.
And that actually, at the time I was working with them, wasn't working. I mean, it wasn't making a whole lot of money. Given, I don't know if the economics are the same, but I assume that if we look at underground parking, even a little bit, it's gonna end up with large buildings. We're gonna need much more structure around it, and how, I don't see that happening in town. And so I'm wondering whether it's worth spending time on that option for that reason. I mean, I understand what you were saying about.
No, but that was my initial take on it too, was that it, you know, is not gonna be favorable. It's a disruptive, it's definitely like the most extreme of the options, and whether we think that, you know, has a shot at getting through or not.
So my question is, I guess to you, or maybe even somebody in the planning department, if this isn't an option. And I understand that, I mean, I was on the Coolidge Corner District Planning Council 15 years ago when everybody wanted Post Office Square, and we went through the same thing. If there's a way to do some quick drawings to show what the impacts are of doing something underground so that people see what happens or what it means to do that. Just simple, I don't know what,
Without the
sketches,
full-on 3D.
without doing the full-on study of it.
Or to, I guess, I know the 3 that we move on with, you have visualization and cost estimates. I'm almost more interested to see the visualization of 5 and the cost estimate of 1, because that's probably what we're gonna need if that ends up happening, like. But we don't really need the visualization effort on the parking lot, but if the visualization of these are the buildings that are needed to support an underground parking lot are enough to scare people to kind of rule that out or to give people a feeling one way or the other. I could make the case for 1 or 5. Like, it sounds like 3 and 4 are both worth exploring, and whether we need additional information on 1 or 5, I could be convinced either way.
Is that feasible? Is that something that we can have instead of 3 full-on explorations?
Could you repeat again the,
So I don't need, do we really need the cost estimate on one to, well, I was gonna say on 1 to pursue it, like, if that's gonna end up, if these 3 options, I guess at the end of this committee, let's say we have these 3 options, we narrow it to 1, this is a recommendation. And if nothing ends up happening with it, can you kind of fall back on a refurbishment of the lot?
What looks like option 1, and you've already done the visualization for Center Street West becoming residential, so maybe you're saying, let's look at 3, 4, 5.
I think so, that's where I'm blending.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting idea. I also think in terms of the pricing for 4 and 5, if it is possible to say, this is what the pricing is with this many spots, and this is what the pricing is if we pull down the number or be like 1 level up or less. Does that make sense? I don't know. if
well,
that makes
because
sense.
1 is for all intents and purposes, a 2-dimensional scheme.
Yeah.
You don't need to visualize it in 3 dimensions.
Right.
So we could stop where we are with option 1, keep it on the table, but not develop it any further, and then develop 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that
but
might-
I guess my question is, do we need to really develop 5 and get the price?
Well, I think people need to see.
And I also think,
Yes, but just that's to see that, but
but I
not,
think the pricing will determine, so if you estimate the cost to go underground, whether it's the scheme that, was brought up, it has the problem of crossing the street versus going 3 stories underground on the east lot. Once you have a number for that, you can get a sense of what the return on the buildings above that need to be. So that cost piece is important because if developers are looking for a 7% IRR or something, you need to be able to back into how much income they need to be generating in order to hit that
And
return.
that also helps you present it, because if you're not gonna get a return unless you do 10 stories, or you need
Yeah.
X number of units, and you know that it's not gonna go through the town.
right.
I mean, I live
But-
in Brookline,
Yeah.
I've seen this happen, and you already know that there's gonna be trouble in that, then do you really wanna pursue that? Because then you're looking at years.
Right. But if there's a way, but if developing it further, the number ends up being that, oh, if we have a 5-story building over here and you have the retail and you have this, it actually does work. If we give some tax incentive, or if like the, ground lease rate is, lower than we would otherwise do, but it makes the project happen, there's value in kind of figuring out where that lands.
And also, I think having multiple fleshed out alternatives are important for presenting to the public to say, well, we landed on option 3 or option 4, whatever, as a recommendation, because we also explored this underground parking that you, sir, are asking about, and here's why it didn't work. Instead of just take my word for it, we say this is what it looks like, or maybe we don't say that. One thing I personally want to say about the parking study, and then we can go back to being chair and looking at the time. I, on a personal level, agree that there is in theory enough parking in the area, but I wonder whether if it is more condensed in a garage or some kind of structured parking at Center Street, that then this is where we get into the alignment with the bigger, I'm forgetting the name of the.
Waldo Durgan.
No,
The
the
Coolidge
planning,
Corner study.
no, the big planning, comprehensive.
comprehensive.
Yeah, that. Once you move that, you have a nice structured parking on Center Street, maybe now the Babcock Street lot can be used for something that's not parking. Right? Or something else that right now is parking can be moved to another use once we've made up the spots here. So I kind of agree, we don't need to necessarily increase the larger Coolidge Corner area.
I also would be curious, and I don't wanna sidetrack us more, but if like Coolidge Corner is larger than this one section that we're looking at, if parking were all concentrated in this area and then we offset it elsewhere, if that were to affect the businesses that are kind of on the outskirts. If you like concentrated too much, then the theater and CVS and that one strip becomes where everybody goes because it's closest to their cars, as opposed to having lots elsewhere and having this dispersed helps.
So I wouldn't get rid of the Fuller Street lot,
Yeah.
but I think Babcock is, it's right there. and
Mhm.
It's
You
just,
were on that committee too.
Which one?
Babcock.
It never got started, actually.
We have a
okay, so we
question or
we have a
comment?
question and then,
No, Marion has her hand up
Yes.
again.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't have a Zoom screen, so I can't,
No, no.
thanks, Zach.
that's why I'm here. Marion, do you want to speak up?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to look at the report from the Affordable Housing Overlay District, because we had good consultants who, and I'll say it's dated. It's dated since we had the big beautiful bill, of maximum heights and what you could get. They were coming out of 4 or 5 stories, dealing with existing tax credits, but they gave a format. It's on the town site, and the Excel sheet can be moved, new numbers can be put in, you can figure out what tax credits have gone, given our president. Because we have to be very realistic about, you know, what federal funding's there and what the impact's going to be, and what state funding would be, and what kind of subsidies. So that information is available that I think should be fed into this. So
Any other raised hands?
There are no other raised hands.
Oh, there's a raised hand in the room, yes.
How many spaces do you get per level for underground parking?
Hey, Beth. How many spaces were in
Yes.
each level? If we just did the one lot, 3 stories. Do you have that count?
Not on hand. I can follow up quickly after the meeting. I think that just the east lot on a single level would be probably like 60%-ish of the total parking that's in these 2 lots today. So you would have to get 2 levels to probably replace, and then you could add another level to support development.
So it's about 120 spots per level.
How much per space?
No, 60 per level, 120. Oh, no, you're right.
120 spots per.
Not
Yeah.
quite, 60%,
then.
60%.
Yeah,
100%, there's 200 spaces.
Yeah, right.
Oh, okay, got it,
So how much,
So 120, 240.
got it,
what's the cost per spot to go underground?
a lot.
That's anyone's guess.
Yeah.
It could be in the 6 figures.
And I had a number from Jessica.
About $150,000 this ledge.
So you're talking,
If there's ledge.
Yeah,
Which
you're
probably
talking
is.
$30 to $45 million just to go underground.
Yeah,
So that's why the developer needs to go pretty high up.
Yeah.
I actually trying to do the math in my head. I don't see
I don't see a
how
project
you
that's
don't
that,
go
yeah.
less than 25 stories. to pull
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, I did, now that
That's
we've
not-
had the 3 stories, it's, yeah, that's not for the residential, you can have a big,
No.
now you can build office towers these days, but there's nothing that.
As much as I'd like to
There's
draw,
no way.
as much as
Yeah.
I'd like to draw it. I'm just finding it, I should let Chris speak because he understands the politics better than me, but I just can't imagine having any financially viable solution that's also politically viable.
Right.
So my concern though,
Is all
Is-
the people that say,
why
Why
didn't
did
you dig
you
under?
go to
Because
the-
I cannot tell you how many people are already saying
Yeah.
the obvious answer
Well, you don't have
is
to
to
show,
put the parking
you
underground.
don't have to show the real estate. You don't have to show the real estate. You can just say, well, what's 200 times 150,000?
Well, no, I'm telling you,
It's-
you can't. I'm telling you, even if, maybe we don't need the 3D visualization from every angle, but maybe we need something that says, something with your stamp on it, not me doing the math. We need something that says spec density looked into this. And in order to offset the cost here, in our experience, a developer would want to go this many stories up, even if you have this kind of setback and you have this lovely like 4th floor balcony, and then this is what it would look like in Center Street. Is that what you want?
I guess there's also, so we have been talking about it as if you have the underground, because it's physically under all these buildings that a developer is building, that it's part of the development project. But if we're talking about options 3 and 4, where you have a separate side lot, the town is paying up to $15 million for that potentially, and then a developer is building buildings, and you have that sort of scenario. There's nothing that says if you go underground, the town can't contribute to the cost of it because it's gonna be town parking. And it's a split of some sort of dollars that actually makes sense for the project. Like, I just think there's too many variables at this point in time for us to conclusively speak to the finances of really any of these options.
I mean, I think I just go back to, we said option 1, we don't really need to do more
Yeah.
visualization on. Option 2 is out, so I
So
think we're
3,
left
4,
with
5.
8 options to look at, but.
Yeah,
Fran,
well,
whatever-
so I pulled up the timeline and next step slide because
Mhm.
this is not the only narrowing down that this committee is gonna have to do.
Yeah.
Right.
And so to me, there is some sense in what Shanna is saying here, which is if you move ahead with 3, 4, 5, even if we don't think 5 is that viable, it provides a valuable political tool for the folks that are asking, what about underground? What about underground? What about underground? And that's a good chunk of folks. You're gonna have to do more narrowing, but you can at least say you did the further narrowing informed by the cost estimates that we're gonna do in the cost estimates and the visualizations that we're gonna do in this next step. And that, much maybe to Gary's dismay, who Gary has stated, he does not want to just see a refresh service parking lot here. It's maybe the cynic in me. I continue to think the most likely outcome here is a refresh surface parking lot. I think that's the most likely outcome of maybe not the recommendation of this committee, but the most likely real world outcome of what we're going to have in 5 or 10 years is a refresh surface parking lot. And I think that option stays alive, even because it's so easy relative to the other options, even if this committee doesn't advance it any further than today.
Yeah.
Just the image that we've created alone is probably enough to keep the idea of the refresh lot alive.
Although I think a price on that, if it's not too much work, to just say, to do this and have the nice trees and all this other stuff, this is what it would be.
Maybe we're not going to commit to doing that
I know,
for it
I know.
because we've committed to doing 3.
I know,
We
I
have to make some
understand.
choices, but
I would love to know what just the trees cost.
I think we should include option 1 for those reasons. And then potentially also keeping it open to be flexible based on what we get from wayfinding. So maybe we can do some of the more interesting things in the space after we see the results.
so then so if you're keeping 1, which one are you eliminating? What are the other 2 that you're keeping?
I don't think 5 is practical.
I think Len and I have described the 2 pathways forward for this committee tonight. Either you keep 5 in because it gives you a talking point later on, or you take 5 out because you know 1 is much more likely and it's helpful to have a lot more information and visualizations about.
Quick question about 1, if you do 1, do we get both versions of 1?
Yeah, because the western
Sorry,
lot
not
is
once.
part of 3 and 4.
Yeah, so it's.
We can just use some scotch tape and put it.
I'm trying to think of what we gain from 1, aside from the pricing that Chris has said they won't commit to, which is fine. So that's the thing that we would gain from having 1 included in our 3 options. Is because,
I think effectively, yes. Yeah.
so
mean,
I'm
you know,
just gonna say, I don't.
And the
see
east,
as much
the east
benefit to
lot,
that.
better visuals of the east lot. But I kind of think the first image we showed of the French parking lot, sort of does a version of that.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of how we're gonna sell this later. Whatever we might want to recommend, that's not just the parking lot, what gives us the best shot of
And
trying to get something.
I think the cost estimate for 3, 4, or 5, where there's a lot of different aspects to play with, where you can say, oh, this came in really expensive. What if we change this aspect? What if we change this aspect to develop further? There's just more to work
Nothing
with
you can change on 1.
on 1. Yeah, if you get a cost estimate of 1, it's like, this is what it costs. But like, you're gonna get that if the town pursues that, you're gonna get an RFP, you're gonna bid it out, and you're gonna get the cost of it, and the cost is gonna be what the cost is gonna be. I don't know that the cost estimate provides that much value at this point in time.
You need
And you guys
data.
are okay
You
putting
need
parking
data,
deck
and you need examples
against
so
Center
that you
Street?
can help people understand what the difference of cost is.
Yeah.
If you're gonna sell it to me, I'm a Brookline resident, you're selling this to me, I want to hear exactly what you're saying, John. I want to hear that, oh gosh, 5 was a great idea, but holy smokes.
Right.
It's so expensive, because then I can say, oh, they really did their work. And they looked at it. I mean, if I'm just an average person out there that you gotta sell it to. You want as much power as you can get.
I'm concerned if 3, 4, and 5 all come out very high.
Yep.
They're like, well, what else is
Well,
there?
we already know.
Right, but that's what Chris was saying, we don't have to take one off the table because we're not advancing it further. That we could still go back to one if that's the outcome, you know, we don't need, I don't know that you gain that much as a comparison point by having a fully baked cost estimate for it. You know, it's gonna be significantly cheaper than 3, 4, and 5, and also looking at the cost estimates for those. The side lot, I feel like there's these plazas in there that you probably extrapolate like roughly cost wise. You know, if we're planting trees, you're gonna have unit costs in there that could give you a sense of
We can get that from DPW.
that too, yeah.
So I want to ask so, again, I'm trying to process all this, and we do have to make choices. Do we have to reduce to 3? So there are 2 different possibilities. One is we get beautiful, we ask you guys to work and make beautiful renditions of 3, 4, and 5. But we keep one on the table because there's almost no way to remove it from the table. We just don't need to know a lot more about it. Or is it better for us to actually make a hard decision now? It's late, but make a hard decision now. Assuming that that is possible, I want to ask you 2 guys. 3 and 4 seem very similar, except for this difference. One violates the rules and the other is potentially iconic. Am I right to infer that you vastly prefer 4 to 3, even though they're pretty much similar?
You're right to infer that.
So it's possible we could say, please mock us up 1, 4, and 5, knowing that 1 is the minimal, which is the center of gravity politically. 5 is, it could be tremendous, but probably we can't do it.
Right.
And if we're gonna do 3 or 4,
But one of the advantages 3 has, I feel like, is that half the parking lot can stay in use while the other half has structure being built. You might be able to do that with 4 too. It's in the back half, right? So you could enter the
That's what I
front.
was thinking.
So Gary, you asked Spec Dempsey and only Spec answered about 3 and 4.
Yeah.
You know, 4 is, as you say, iconic. I think from a political perspective, it's much riskier.
Yeah.
Because it's not something that people have experienced before. 3, you're getting a pretty standard parking structure that everybody's driven into at some point in their life, and you can point to 10 of them within 2 square miles. There's one down the street of Brookline Village, right? 4 is kind of hard for people to understand and visualize. It hadn't been not a lot of people have been in a space with a big parking structure above them that they feel welcome in. They feel like they want to have a farmer's market. It doesn't mean it can't exist. It's just that people haven't experienced that. And so 4 has maybe the most upside, and if it can get built, could be really spectacular and cool, but it might never get built because town meeting can never really wrap their heads around what this is, and it's scary.
Well, is it part of what you're doing?
Visualizing that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, I think it has a lot of, you know, the farmer's market could be there in the winter.
I'm gonna try this one more time. I honestly think just stating, I think from an intellectual point of view, from a rhetorical point of view, it's no better to say we have to build all these towers to pay for the, $40 million underground deck than to say the underground deck costs $40 million. I don't understand the intellectual approach that says we have to show towers in order to sell that as a mistake.
I, again, just in speaking with people, there are people who say, I'm sure there's a developer who would love to excavate and put some housing above it, and they don't know what some housing means.
are they on
And
town
that's
meeting?
what,
Are they on town meeting this week?
a couple of them. And then quite a number of people who, vote for town meeting members, right? I keep coming back to not understanding what we gain by playing out option 1 right now.
So
And then with, I think 3 and 4 are different enough that you kind of might need to show people why 4 looks better.
So if I can suggest having Heather and mitigated Gob coming back and make a suggestion after.
Yeah, I know, I tried to move us along and then I kept having ideas, I'm sorry.
Right, so well, we, you know me, I want to be out of here by 7:30, and so that's no longer possible.
Well, you came back.
That's true. But I mean, the whole thing. So we do need to conclude. There are two ways to conclude. One is, well, we can say, you know, we can pick 1, 4, and 5. We can pick 3, 4, and 5. However or we can say, let's just chew on this. And what do you want to? And I know you want us to get going.
Or you can vote.
We only have a month.
No, we should vote. I have 4 already. It's the question is 1 or 5.
1 and 5.
No, but Gary said do 1, 4, and 5.
I'm a little nervous about chewing on it more because I think we could all talk this in circles and convince ourselves of every possible permutation.
Right.
So maybe voting makes like unless people are like really, really strongly object to one route over the other. Like if everybody's comfortable kind of going with the majority.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do.
Well, no, so what are?
Yes.
What else tell me? Okay, and for my real there's 3, 4, 5, 1.
Hold on, what I'm gonna do is go down the list of members. And what I'd like is 3 numbers.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and
So we're gonna let you vote.
Okay.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for being
You're
here.
coming.
Okay. Unfortunately, I'm gonna put that in there, but unfortunately you can't.
I know I did.
But thank you so much.
So-
And I
Thank you.
really appreciate
Thank
it.
you guys for coming.
It is. I just
Yeah.
think it's,
And then when we're trying to sell for the public, can we get you in on that?
no guarantees.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep, right.
All right.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go down, well, I don't want to leave the folks on the online who have been on Zoom out. So well, okay, I'm just gonna have a list here. Sean,
3, 4, 5.
okay. Julia,
3, 4, 5.
motion,
0. I don't like any of the options. I think that none of them is elaborated in terms of the staging. I think there is a great deal of uncertainty about the future. I think that the East Lot is an important asset for the future of Brookline. And I think there's a great deal of uncertainty what the best thing to do with the East Lot at this point. And so I think whatever options are being considered should be considered in terms of staging, how it is happening, what happened first, what happened next, what can be done in 1 year, what can be done in 5 years, etc. And so that's, I think, I'm not ready to select any of the options. In terms of question, another question, I have another question.
I have to move on, Moshe.
Okay, so I said 0, but I want to ask one more question. And the other question is about, there was a lot talk about parklet, but I think one of the option is parkette, which means park E-double-T-E in this West Lot area. I'm sorry, in the East Lot area. And I think my question is why none of the option has include a small park in that area.
Okay.
3, 4, 5.
Marion,
Marion, you're muted.
and Jim, you're next.
Are you ready for me?
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I'm gonna go 1, 4, 5.
Okay. Ann,
I guess I'll do 3, 4, 5.
Gary,
3, 4, 5.
Elaine,
3, 4, and 5.
Len,
1, 3, 4.
Marion didn't vote.
I, 1,
just 1.
just 1.
Okay. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, 3, 4, and 5 very clearly is the vastly overwhelming preference. So that's our answer.
Thank you. Good.
And doesn't happen to be mine, but that's all. Great. Thank you all very much. This was, at least for the hour and 40 minutes that I was here, I'm sure for the other half hour as well.
You missed
very
great
productive.
stuff, Mike.
I did. I'm sure I did. It's so interesting to hear. I'm so glad that we put this committee together because there's such a range of experience and knowledge here. This is great. Thank you. And thank you all.
Thank you all.
Marion and Moshe, and Ben, and good luck in Hawaii. In Hawaii. Send us a picture of yourself in a roller skate.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks, bye.